You've been busy.
We have been pretty busy. Planning Commission met last Thursday. They only had 2 items on their agenda, but they were both big weighty items. They had a study session on the proposed regulations, incentives, and guidelines for multi-unit residential development. Of course, this was a follow-up to the joint meeting that you had with the Commission on May 2nd. They had some additional thoughts on the matters, and I think it's moving along, it's evolving, and we'll be bringing it back to you for another study session at this point tentatively scheduled for your September 1st meeting. And then they held a public hearing and approved the final development plan for Parcel C of the Marketplace redevelopment project. That is the grocery store and 66 units of residential with parking above the grocery store. On your dais in front of you, you should have a fact sheet that is a summary of the Commission's approval of that item. Just for your information, it gives the unit breakdown and some of the key comments that the Planning Commission had. So that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have. Just let me note that that second item, the FDP, is appealable to the City Council within 15 days, which I believe would be by a week from this coming Friday. And if the Council wishes to consider calling it up for review yourselves, this would be the time to do that.
Yeah, Jack.
I just have a quick comment. I want to thank staff and Charlie for putting together this fact sheet for me. The Planning Commission often comes just a couple of days before we meet here as a City Council, and just to have this salient information, especially around the issues that we've been talking about so much, is really useful, especially the unit mix and the comments about family-friendly housing. So thank you for putting this together.
And just to note, we do have some of the other final development plans for the Marketplace project coming up at the Commission in the next couple of months, and I'll be providing a similar fact sheet for you about each of them after the Commission takes action.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Charlie.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
Are the designs for these units family-friendly designs as we had looked at as preferred?
Yes, they are. The applicant has been working very closely with Arnold Mammarella, who is our design consultant. He's the same gentleman who was here at your last meeting when you adopted the family-friendly design guidelines. He's been very closely involved in the development of the design guidelines, so he's very familiar with them. He's had numerous multi-hour meetings with the development team on the design of their units. I would note that a few of the units he was not 100% satisfied with, and the Commission did include at staff's recommendation a condition that they continue to work with us and him until we're happy that those units do in fact totally comply with the family-friendly design guidelines.
I have a question. Yeah. Are we going to have an opportunity to know how that's resolved and when it's resolved, whether those units are going to comport with our guidelines?
Well, I can certainly report back to you. I mean, we're just talking about little details about where the dining room table is placed and things like that. But I can certainly report back after we've done that.
But
Are there any other questions?
So are we going to be asked to vote on the 66 units of housing and the entire project at a future date?
No, this is a final development plan. The final decision is by the City Council, by the Planning Commission, unless it's appealed to the City Council.
Okay.
The way a PUD works, as a planned unit development, is the City Council approves the overall plan for the site, which in this case was done back in 2008. And then the Planning Commission makes the decision on the individual buildings.
Unless it's appealed.
Unless it's appealed.
It doesn't come up here.
Is there public comment on this item? On this item?
I have paid very close attention to the family-friendly design guidelines that you all passed. The Planning Commission also passed them. And I've paid close attention to the public marketplace development. And I'm here to say there's no way any reasonable person could conclude that that project comports with the family-friendly design guidelines with specificity, Mr. Bryant, too. typical unit plans, bedrooms and how bedrooms are accessible to the common space within a living unit. The problem with this project is virtually every apartment or condominium, I guess they're apartments, virtually every one falls under the rubric of unacceptable according to the family-friendly design guidelines. And the reason why it's unacceptable is because the bedrooms enter onto the living rooms and the dining rooms and the kitchens, and that is expressly verboten according to the family-friendly design guidelines. The guidelines are very clear about that. As a matter of fact, they show typical acceptable floor plans and unacceptable. And what is unacceptable is that condition where the bedrooms open up onto the living spaces, like the living rooms and the dining rooms. So this development project, the public market, is chock-a-block with bedrooms that open onto living spaces. So I'm not making this up. There are some units that do comport and do have bedrooms that are off of hallways, which is what they're supposed to do. And those are called in the public market development project, those are called the townhouses. All the other ones, matter of fact, virtually none of the other ones comport with the guidelines with vis-a-vis this specific problem. So I would like to have Mr. Bryant address that. And I don't see how we can say yes to these guidelines and then right away say yes to this project, which turns the guidelines on their head. I think if we're going to let this project, the public market project, go through, we have to suspend the guidelines at least until the project goes through, and then maybe we could vote to have them become the law in the city again. But as I say, there's no way any reasonable person can look at the design guidelines that you passed and then look at the public market project and say that those two documents comport with each other. Just no reasonable person could say that. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this? This isn't an action item, it's for information.
Could we ask some more questions, like what Mr. Donahue just said? Is that true? Is it true that the vast majority do not comport with the family-friendly preferred?
No, that is not true. There have been multiple study sessions on the Marketplace project, and there are multiple buildings in the Marketplace project. There are 2 other residential proposed buildings that haven't been approved yet, and there's this one. I believe what Mr. Donahue is probably referring to is one or more of the other buildings, and probably some of the previous plans that were shown at the study sessions. I don't believe he was at the public hearing where the Planning Commission approved this.
Oh, be careful here.
I may be misremembering, I don't know. But at any rate, our consultant showed floor plans, overhead, and walked the Planning Commission through the design, and the Planning Commission was satisfied that they generally complied with the design guidelines, with the exception of the ones that they wanted a little more tweaking of. But they were satisfied with our design consultant's analysis.
Okay.
Any other department heads?
Yeah. Pedro.